Well, let's try this again. Let's see how we're doing. Terrible lag. Let's see if the lag's any better here than Facebook. Let's see if the lag's any better here than Facebook. Much better. Facebook was like 20 seconds. So anyway, nobody's here yet. I'll wait until some folks show up. You know, a day without mean, stupid people is like a day in paradise. I haven't been anywhere near any idiots all day today. I looked at their shit, block them as soon as they show up at Facebook. Well, there's 4 folks here. I'm sure all 4 of you are like mean, stupid assholes, so welcome. And hey, feel free to shit post and A-log all you like, boys. I don't care. You can't make me angry. You can't make me cry. You can't make me rage. All you can do is show the world what mean, stupid fucktards you are. So have at it. I'm going to read this. The question is, what do we do about a woman with a penis? This is a blog about the penis in women's spaces, the cotton ceiling, and the definition of womanhood by Cassie Brighter, who runs an organization called Empowered Trans Women. And she starts out, before we begin, a note on virtual signaling and call-out culture. Far too often, I see an otherwise good article or YouTube video derail into shaming and virtue signaling. The holier-than-thou posture robs the piece of any value. Something that could have been great advice turns into sanctimonious finger-pointing. The problem with this is that the very people the author aims to reach with their plea, the people most in need of that message, are the most likely to shut it down, get defensive, and reject the whole premise when such call-out language is used. It is my fervent hope in writing this article that I'll manage to escape this trap, manage to communicate my points without positioning myself as a better human, I'm not, or making anyone feel defensive. Well, I really feel that Cassie is a better human than these people that are like, the cancel culture. Fuck those people. They're intellectually dishonest. They're self-loathing, in denial, and projecting it at others. A great model I'm asking the reader to adopt is that of the spinach in my teeth metaphor put forward by Jay Smoot. If someone points out that a behavior is racist, bigoted, or transphobic, you can think of it as someone pointing out you have spinach in your teeth. Rather than angrily fighting back, thank that person for their input, go check in a mirror. You might actually have some dark green on your pearly whites. And rather than feel ashamed, simply remove the spinach and get back to the social occasion. We're living through times of great social change and we're all learning. Let's all practice humility, solidarity, and acceptance. Let's learn from one another. And one thing that's real important to understand and teach each other is that within the LGBTQ universe, there are numerous different cliques and factions. And jargon that is in common use with one faction, such as tranny, turf, faggot, things like that, may be highly offensive to others. And we need to really watch ourselves on, who's cool with what, and just work around it as best we can. Quick one question survey. Trans women are women. A, I agree. B, I disagree entirely. Trans women are entitled men invading women's spaces and pose a threat to women. C, I don't fully agree. While I understand some men are very feminine and choose to dress and act as women, they're still biologically men, which is a flawed argument. They're biologically male. but their gender may be biologically female. We're born this way. And there's a certain portion of the population that is born both physically and psychologically better suited for the transgender role. Just get used to it. We have to. We have no choice in the matter. I can humor them on pronouns, but that does not magically turn them into women. I am a woman with a penis. I am a male with a female gender. You know, I'm sexually, biologically, my sexual organs are male, but my gender is female. Sorry. I mean, it's just the way it is. And the doctors agree with me, and so does the Supreme Court. So, anyway, let's see if anybody's saying anything. Nope. Hardly anybody here. Joe must not be back because he'd probably pipe in with some bullshit. Some misinformed fucking transphobic crap. The women's circle. In a grassy river area by the river, 20 women stand in a circle. They're in a women's retreat. They've gathered for a radical body positive exercise. The exercise centers on the yoni, which is the tantric word for a woman's genitalia, and will include nudity and self-exploration. 19 of these women are vulva-clad, vagina-equipped, natal, cisgender women. One of these women is trans. While she might not refer to her genitals by the word penis or testicles, that's what they are anatomically. And though transformed by several years of female hormones, her genitals are likely to be understood as male genitals by most women present, but they just really don't work the same way anymore. It's just not. I mean, even the orgasm is totally different. This is the challenge we face. Do we allow the trans gal to participate in the exercise, which includes shedding all clothes and touching one's genitals, or do we specifically exclude her for fear of triggering one or more of the other women? As a facilitator of sex-positive events, I've agonized over this question. It doesn't help that I happen to be trans myself. I've recently reached out to my friend Jimena Alvarado, a PhD, a Portland-based professor of feminism and social justice, what used to be called women's studies. Jimena was happy to dissect this with me. My predisposition is always to lift up the voices of the most marginalized, Jimena told me. From Jimena's model, excluding the trans woman is untenable. So it becomes a question of managing the expectations of other participants. It's up to the organizer, the event leader, Jimena said. They should have framed the event in such a way that all present understand and agree with that inclusivity. Now, to go back here to the most marginalized, in a woman's circle like that, who is going to be more marginalized, the transgender woman or the survivor of sexual assault? Okay, so this is a very delicate issue here because the survivor of sexual assault is the one that's going to be most triggered by having a penis in the audience. Genitalia and expression. We talked about the symbology of the penis. Jimena and I immediately agreed that penis owners have historically hurt vagina owners in many ways. Some of these ways have specifically included the penis as a weapon, as an instrument of harm. Some of the women in the circle could be survivors of rape or sexual assault. So it's really important to start by openly acknowledging that history and that symbology by directly addressing these concerns. Not keeping anybody's interest either, except for the bots. The event leader can explain that while there is an obvious similarity between a trans woman's genitals and those of a man, this person's genitals have received years of female hormones. They respond differently, they carry a different energy. While a man's penis is an object of great pride, a trans woman's member is often a source of dysphoria and shame. A man's penis swaggers and struts, conquers and acquires, and penetrates. Trans gals generally carry none of this energy. Speaking in generalities, a man's sexuality is urgent and assertive and can be invasive. Trans gals' sexuality is docile, patient, hesitant, and fragile. Note, an acquaintance asked me to emphasize, I'm speaking in generalities here. You may find men who are shy, docile, and or passive with their penis. You may find trans women who are comfortable using their genitals for penetration. As with anything, YMMV. whatever that means. I'm just not real good up on all these like too hip acronyms. But I'm speaking from having spoken with dozens upon dozens of trans women. Hopefully, such explanations can put the other women at ease that the trans gal is just another woman, albeit one with an odd-looking yoni. Kicking this around with another cis gal, a human rights activist, yielded another gem. If we started excluding whole demographics because of abuse we experience from humans with similar features, we could find ourselves excluding a whole race, or everyone with blue eyes, or ectomorphs, etc. Us skinny people. The gym locker room. A common scenario used by trans exclusionists is the women's locker room at the gym. Boy, put trans woman in a men's locker room, it's a fucking nightmare. Horror story. It might be startling or upsetting for a woman to see a naked person in the gym locker room and to find that person has a penis. One gal recently told me that her first day at her gym, she walked into the locker to be immediately confronted by a very naked 70-year-old cis woman. And that was startling for her. I asked her what could have made the situation better. She said, well, the old woman could have covered up. Then she had, or I could have fewer hang-ups about the naked human body. There's a happy medium there. Most people don't go around strutting naked. And it can be kind of shocking to people that are a little more modest. I invite you, the reader, to consider things you might encounter in the gym locker room that might be startling. A naked trans woman, a naked old woman, a naked handicapped woman, an amputee, a little person, an obese lady, a person of a different race. I'm not judging you. Several of these would startle me. And it's okay to be startled. What's not okay is to express things about people like that out loud. There's nothing to be ashamed of if you're startled by the sight of a naked little person or a naked morbidly obese person. It's okay. To say anything out loud about it is not. Here's Cassie saying, I would work through it and try to consider it a growth experience. I hope you wouldn't be the person that goes to the manager and says, excuse me, but there's a woman in a wheelchair in there and it's making me uncomfortable. Can you ask her to leave? You might find these analogies to be invalid because a penis indicates the person is not a woman. If so, please click here. We'll get to that later. The cotton ceiling. There's a term that was coined by porn actress and trans activist Drew DeVoe in 2015. It's been used to refer to the tendency by cisgender lesbians to outwardly include and support trans women, but draw the line at considering ever having sex with them. I'm experiencing that in my contacts in the lesbian groups. Nobody's like, they're keeping me at arm's length for sure. Nobody's showing any kind of interest in intimate relationship with me at all. Several trans activists have very lucidly addressed the various prejudices that play into this position. I believe Riley J. Dennis nails it here. I don't want to even go into that. Sadly, I've seen at least two YouTube responses from turkey bloggers who profoundly and maliciously twist Riley's words to connote an obligation to sleep with trans women. If this has occurred to you, please stick around. The point of such a discussion is not ever to exhort anyone to have grudging sex without enthusiastic consent. My penis is not attracted to other people with penises. That's just the way it is. What can I say? I fully sympathize with the man who refuses to sleep with a trans woman. I'm not going to stand and judge him as transphobia or anything like that. It's a personal thing. Transphobia Um, if they're otherwise acknowledging the legitimacy of the trans woman's existence and they just don't want to have sex with them, that's not transphobic. I'm sorry, but it's not. If they're accepting the scientific facts about us and allowing us equal rights within the social circles, I'm cool with it. I don't think that's transphobic that they don't want to have sex with a trans woman. That's just their business. And gender identity really needs to be separated from sexuality completely anyway. The point of such a discussion is to exhort folks to examine their inherent discriminatory prejudices of bigotry. And before you get all bristly on me, I will confess a few bigotries of my own. Had you asked me 5 years ago, I would have told you I would never date an Asian. I just don't find trans men attractive. I wouldn't consider a trans woman relationship material. Times have changed and I've grown. And I'm presently in a serious, committed relationship with an Asian NB, non-binary person. I think Jake Graff is hella sexy. And I would absolutely date a trans woman. Oh, Lord. More bad news between blacks and cops. Fresh story. What changed? Mostly familiarity and proximity. Also, one hopes I've grown as a person. I've humanized such folks by getting to know a few, which led me to challenge and to re-examine my prejudice and fixed ideas. I've challenged my internal stories for people depending on their looks. The way I've been conditioned all my life is that nothing matters about anybody in terms of how they look, their sex, their gender, their financial status, their religion, their color of their skin, any of it. None of it matters before you consider whether this is a nice person or a mean dick. I don't care about any of that other stuff. I'm conditioned to embrace the diversity and listen to what these people want to tell me about themselves, and not to be rejecting them out of hand because they're Asian or black or transgender. I'm rejecting you because you're an asshole. I'm embracing you because you're a nice person. I wish I could include Avery Fawcett's article at Queer Feminism here, but I'll just drop this one paragraph and urge you to read the rest. I pinned the misogyny that at the time I attributed to almost all men onto trans women as well. I assumed that sex with a trans woman would be penetrative and violent, that I wouldn't have the camaraderie with a trans woman that I felt to done with many cis women, that female history is somehow very important. I didn't think about a trans female experience might be like, or what a trans woman's relationship to her body might be. I was pretty naive about sex, and I put a lot of stake in body parts because I was fumbling with my own gender, body, and sexuality. I said that I was against transphobia, but knew no openly trans people. The girls like to say it's about hearts, not parts. I don't look very feminine, but my behavior is womanly enough that I don't get misgendered persistently. I might get read as male, but people accept that I'm female when I say I am. The OkCupid blog once reported that Indian men fare the worst on that site. A Redditor invited conversation on that, and some answers pointed out stereotypes. Indian men tend to be geeky and socially awkward, and some brought up legitimate concerns. Indian men are pressured to marry Indian women, and they only be biding their time in dating American women. The point was that we're not all immediately obligated to bed an Indian unless we be branded bad people. The point was to consider to what degree social prejudices and lack of representation are impacting our psyche. I would have never dated an Asian. Why? I had these perceptions of Asian cultures that intimidated me. I considered the Chinese culture a cold culture, not nurturing, perfectionist, performance-driven, unforgiving, and I'm a sloppy mess, not detail-oriented, forgetful, and unorganized. I would feel exposed and vulnerable. So a lot of these fears were a reflection of my own insecurities. Having now had plenty of time to challenge these stereotypes, I can tell you in some ways I was just being racist and also reductionist. Even if there's a cultural vibe to a group of people, what might be true of folks in Hong Kong might not be true of Beijing. And what might be true of Northern China may not apply to the South, just like Albany, New York is not the same as Houston, Texas. Fuck, Albany, New York isn't the same as Hudson, New York. And totally different from the city. Of course, Asia is a vast continent. China is just one of the many countries in it. In some ways, my fears about cultural differences were founded, and we had to overcome some cultural challenges. There are things I take for granted about the way humans do things, which are entirely based on my Buenos Aires childhood in a Russian community. And there are things my partner assumes about the way it is with humans based on their Seattle childhood in a Chinese American community. I once got in the car of an OK Cupid date, and the first words out of their mouth were, "I don't date people whose skin is darker than mine." I thought this was an odd thing to tell me. My skin was lighter than hers, so not only racist, but gratuitously racist. Only years later, I understood West Indies colorism. It's not just the West Indies. There's a lot of black folks in American black folks that come down on people for being too white or too light or too dark. Octoroons are the ones that are too light, it's because they're mixed race. Here's an interesting discussion I found on people's preferences when it comes to dating. I don't care. Yeah. I'm running out of steam on this. Yeah, this is all so overthought. Here's the definition of womanhood. One response I recently got to my article on misgendering says angrily that they won't accept that trans women are biologically the same as cis women. I completely agree that my body is not biologically the same as that of a native woman. I don't menstruate, can't conceive children, I have no uterus. Some would say that makes me less of a woman. Emotionally, I sadly agree. If we take all of the things that make a woman, the ability to birth children is a big part of it. I feel a deep sadness over my barren body, but principally I bristle at the entitled, cruel, and outdated notion that a sterile woman is less than anyone else. Some would simply argue that I'm no woman at all. I've done my best to disinvite such people from reading my article. As a society, we've been debating the notion of full personhood for some time. The founding fathers proudly spoke of equality while writing a document that speaks only of men and while owning slaves, and calling the natives savages. Members of minorities have had to argue their humanity for centuries. Now we are arguing about genderhood, for the right to live our lives according to our gender. You wouldn't think this would need arguing. You wouldn't think people would need convincing. You get to live life in the gender identity that rings true to you. You get to live life with a gender expression that doesn't suffocate you. Don't you wish the same for others? Let's be honest with ourselves. What leads us to build walls is fear. Prejudices lead us to fear other races. Not too long ago, white people kept black people from using the same bathroom. Keeping others out makes us feel safer. However, another way to feel safe without being exclusionary is to challenge our prejudices. Today, we would find it offensive and preposterous if a women's bathroom excluded black women or handicapped women. Science has proven gender is a spectrum. Science has proven gender is separate and distinct from biological sex. And even biological sex is much more nuanced than we previously thought. Well said, Cassie. So can we all adopt a measure of humility and admit that we thought we knew we might be wrong, or at least incomplete? Can we all adopt a measure of compassion? We're fucking born this way. We have no choice in the matter. It's you can choose to be hateful toward us, or just ignore it. If you don't want anything to do with us, just ignore us. Don't make our lives harder. Human rights are not cookies. You don't lose someone, I gain some. And I'm not erasing women by showing the temerity of existing in this world. Women still exist in vast numbers. Allowing trans women in the room just makes more women, not less. Yay, mad. Allowing Asian, Black, and Native American women to sit beside white women did not erase white women. Allowing trans women into women's spaces will not erase natal women. If all this is falling flat with you because you don't think trans women are real women, click here. Let's see what that's about. If you answered C. Now, trans women may have been born with male anatomy, and you might say we're biologically male in our reproductive organs. But the rest of us is neurologically female. When we talk about trans women being female, we're referring to gender, not sex. And to a larger or small degree, these are both impacted by social constructs. Boy, and she's quoting Sapolsky. Nah, I'm through with this. And nobody's paying any attention anyway. Nobody's saying anything. I'm through with that. Let's see if there's anything else interesting going on. I did that online. I suggest you like refrain from calling people sort of man in today's environment. Many people that are transmasculine and transfeminine people. Oh, I'm still streaming, aren't I? I forgot. That's okay. There's a moon child half hour ago asked if I was seriously jacking off. Are you are you seriously fucking nuts, or are you just an annoying troll, moon child? I think I had my hands above the desk all the whole time. Fucking idiot. Let's find you and block your ass. It's probably a Google account. I don't see it. Well, at least Facebook. I mean, YouTube keeps those comments from showing. Hide this notification. Mute Moonchild. Just like fuck her. Anybody here want to say anything? I'm not going to deal with the freaking idiots today at all. I guess not. Happy day. Bye.